Right, where were we? Ah, yes, the sodden eucalypt forests in the Alpine region north of Melbourne. Fantastic.
I'm doing this on my phone because my camera has steamed up. Pretty rough. Totally soaked. Uncontrollably shivering. It's like being at home. Except at home I'd have my lovely heavy wax jacket and not just a t-shirt and a canvas thing. There comes a point where the cost of not having appropriate gear is actually more than what it would have been just to buy the fucking stuff in the first place. And with this constantly deflating back tire, so limited, mood is pretty low. Got 150 kilometers to ride in this weather. I'm not looking forward to it at all, but at least I just had a hot coffee. That was nice. Can't recommend. What happened to Australia in the summer?
At 50 kilometers an hour, that 150 kilometers takes, 3 hours. But eventually I make it to the coast and I arrive wretched and wet like a half-drowned cat. I've ridden this 125 1,000 miles over the past week to come here to visit my friend Bryce. Bryce and I met earlier this year in Çanakkale in Turkey. We spent a couple of days travelling together and now 6 months later here we are, together again in Australia. I spent a few days with him, making the most of his extensive knowledge on the local nature, which is spectacular. I saw koala's arse, and then all too soon, it was time to leave.
Welcome back to An Ordinary World. If you're new here, I'm Ferdia. This is part 2 of the adventures around Australia on this CB125. Today we head for Sydney. Goodbye Melbourne, 1,000 kilometers to go on a slowly deflating rear tyre. Let's do it.
After last week of endless bush, these are the rolling green hills of southeastern Victoria. And at times I feel like I might be in southern England or northern France. It's green and luscious, and oh, the air. After a couple of days of rest, I'm chilled out, the roads are smooth, the weather is good, and for the first time, I see other bikers. It gives me some reassurance having other bikers around as we tick off the miles, slowly squaring off our tyres on these endless straight roads, swapping hands every couple of kilometres to give my wrists a break, and stopping every 50 or 60 or so to fill up the rear tyre. I am concerned, the puncture is getting worse, as is the chain, but I'm optimistic I can nurse it back to Sydney, so long as I don't stop anywhere for too long, which is difficult when you're surrounded by this. I don't think I'll ever be able to stop talking about the nature in Australia. I could happily sit here for hours in this light, just letting the world buzz and slither and hum away around me. It is intoxicating, it is invigorating, and it is humbling.
Oh, it's windy out there. One good thing about travelling so light is it doesn't take long to set up at all. It's by the side of a lake. I actually thought it was the sea. Whenever I wild camp, or whenever just camping in general, and I have company, I always go over and say hi. At the very least, just to suss someone out. And at the best, to strike up a companionship for the evening. So I went over and started talking to him, and he said it's a lake. I was like, it's a lake? Oh, it's a big lake, because I can't see the other side of it. But there you go. Today was a good day, easy ride, about maybe 150, 200 kilometers. I'm going to take it very easy. Today is the 4th. Today is the 4th, and I don't need to be in Sydney until the 14th, so I have 10 days to get the 1,000 kilometers from where I was to Sydney, which is difficult for me. I'm someone who likes to feel like I'm making progress, but sometimes you have to measure progress in something other than kilometers. So I'm going to really try and slow down and take my time, because it's the end of the year. I've got a lot to think about and a lot to mentally prepare myself for, so I'm going to try and use these 10 days to just take it easy. There is a potential bad front of weather coming in 2 days' time, potentially, so we'll see. We might have to take shelter, but yeah, we won't worry about that now. Anyway, this is night 1. I think it's going to be a very windy night.
On Raglan Road, on an autumn day I saw you first, and knew in your green eyes were stranger tides, an ocean vast and cruel. I saw the danger in your smile, the passion in your ways. But you said, let grief be a fallen leaf at the dawning of the day.
So I just spent the last few days with my friend Bryce. He lives just outside of Melbourne. Beautiful place, but I was admiring his coat. He had a dry as a bone coat, as he called it. It's like a great oilskin trench coat, like something out of a cowboy movie. Oh, I had my eyes on it. And he told me, yeah, I got it in an op shop for $20. An op shop? It's an op shop. I was like, oh, you've got to check out the op shops when you're in Australia. Opportunity shops are what they call second-hand stores or thrift stores, and apparently you can get some amazing things in it. He was showing me another big long coat he had, like an old army coat, 100% wool from top to toe, that he picked up for $3 in one of these op shops. So yeah, I said, oh yeah, when I'm heading back up to Sydney, I'm going to stop off in the small towns and see what I can pick up, because I can probably find some things that we couldn't get in Ireland, such as these oilskins. So yeah, let's see what we find. The name of the town is really confusing because I keep seeing all the signs and thinking everything's on sale, and it's just the name of the town. It's very inconvenient.
Day 2, and the exhausted chain has finally popped off these worn knuckles I have for sprockets. Fortunately, it didn't snap, and fortunately, a passing Aussie saw me and came back 10 minutes later with a set of spanners.
That's you.
Oh, mate.
Listen, thank you so much.
No, nice, thanks, buddy.
Thank you. Alright, so I've brought the wheel back as far as it will go, which still leaves not much better than it was. And that's as tight as I can make it. So, I know I said I would take it slow, but it's just been, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to keep putting in miles slowly, because I don't want this thing to pop off when I'm going at 60, but I'm going to try and get as close to Sydney as possible and then slow down. Yeah, just so I can get this bike to as close to the city as possible, so that if anything does happen, at least I can just, yeah, drop it off and say, not my problem anymore, piece of shit.
Any mistake and the chain might pop off again, or worse, break. I need to be so smooth with this. It's slow going, but some things you can't put a price on, and life at 60 kph is one of them. It's a leisurely affair. The day is measured not in hours or distance travelled, but in glorious cups of coffee in gorgeous landscapes. And whilst it is tedious at times, usually when the last of the coffee is leaving your system, all you can do is laugh and remember where you are.
Just in case anyone thinks I'm exaggerating. Open road! Full throttle! Top gear! 60!
A couple of coffees later and the landscape is changing. The rolling green hills become swallowed up by eucalypt rainforest, and it is fantastic, a bit dangerous even, because I can't stop looking up. I thought I knew what tall trees were, but man was I wrong. It's a world of green and brown and strobe-like sunlight, and I am drinking it in. But I think there's a limit as to how many hours one can spend staring into the eucalypt abyss before it starts to get to you. Welcome inside my tent. My air mattress deflates over time, so I'm going to need to blow that up again. But so far it hasn't started to rain. I stupidly forgot the little plastic piece of canvas that goes over the ventilation thing at my friend's place. So I've covered it with a towel and the rainproofing for my tank bag for tonight, because it is the rainforest and there were some dark clouds hanging over the mountains. There's not rain forecast, but we'll see. So hopefully it doesn't rain. I think I'll need to buy a little tarp. Aside from that, yeah, quite sleepy now. I'm in company. I'm camping in the rainforest. That's pretty cool. This is the setup. As you can see, not much. I don't have a pillow, so what I do is I fold my trousers and then put them inside a t-shirt, and then I sleep on that. The book I bought in the second-hand store is very good. I'm 100 pages in. The bottle of wine is empty. Sleeping bag, and then just bits and pieces. A man's tent is his castle. Good night. On Grafton Street, in November, we tripped lightly through the crowd of singers of last summer's songs and prophets, false and proud, who pressed us to the limits of the sea and sky, wherein the faithless wait with one mouth to taste the truth of sweat and skin. And all of this, gifts of mind and signs of secrets that I placed along your way, written on the stones and leaves, the ferns reaching for your waist. But no god cares for a sailor's prayers, and I watched as a wild winged girl was trapped and tamed, and by her own name became fearful of the world. Taken a slight detour and come down to Mallacoota, which is a small little town on the coast surrounded by miles and miles and miles of rainforest. Amazing. But during the 2020 fires, this town was completely cut off and the residents had to sail out in little boats to escape the blaze. And I remember being at home in Sligo this time 4 years ago. It was around New Year's. And watching it, and I remember there was one picture, I think it was published by The Guardian, and it's just stuck with me all these years. And the picture was of a boy in a boat, a little inflatable boat, against, I suppose it was just out there, against this background of just furnace, of blaze, of red, and the look on the kid's face. Amazing photograph. But yeah, that really stuck with me. It was the end of 2020, of course, a tumultuous year. There were a lot of fires that year, both in Europe and here and everywhere. And of course, COVID, a tricky year. And I suppose it stuck with me because at the end of it, you know, it was during that year I was beginning to accept that the path that I was on wasn't one that I had necessarily chosen for myself, and that I just wasn't happy. But it took a long time to come to that realization, because when you've only ever done one thing, it's hard to imagine an alternative, especially when you're in an environment where everybody else is doing that one thing. And I just left Ireland that autumn. I'd been into Paris and Portugal before I started this project. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was starting to realise that what I was doing wasn't it. My relationship had gone through a tough point, and it was just a tricky time. So I remember seeing that photograph and two things coming to mind. One was, oh, we're fucked, the world is fucked. But the second is, I thought I could empathise with that kid. To just be all on his own there in a boat with the blaze. It was quite moving. It stuck with me. So it's nice to come here and see everything so green and lush and peaceful. And here we are 4 years later. So I suppose, even though you don't see it at the time, it's that whole period was a catalyst for positive change, so a lot to be grateful for. Anywho, let's get some petrol and some air and keep going.
Viver todas as simples, dia pra ser feliz, tirando tempo sobre a mão, e a casa que perepicos, vendo fim preto.
Absolute disaster. It's really on its last legs. Look at that. It's about to hop off. I have to be so careful. And it's really fucking tiring. That's ridiculous. Jesus. I can actually just pull the chain off. This rocket's...
Viver todas as simples, dia pra ser feliz, tirando tempo sobre a mão, é cansa que perepis, o vento fim preto branco, e as nuvens a passar, eu não sei flutuar.
Oh wow, it's not too bad down here. It's really nice. I'm amazed at the accuracy of the weather prediction, the weather forecast. I'm used to weather forecasts being something of a joke, really. Because the joke is, what's the weather in Ireland? It's always raining, so they just predict rain every day and they can't get it wrong. But this storm has been forecast for days. I was looking at it when I was down with Bryce. I was kind of expecting it not to materialise, but it's coming over the mountains there now.
One of our friends was walking down the bush trail, and she didn't realise that there's a great big spider across the track, you know.
Oh yeah?
And she's telling stories and looking forward, looking back, looking forward.
Oh no.
Yeah, and she sucked it into her mouth and it bit her in her throat
Oh
2
my
or 3
God.
times or whatever.
Jesus.
Yeah, well, it didn't actually hurt her, but
Okay.
it probably went a bit funny in there for half an hour or something.
Good morning. We made it through the night. I didn't sleep great though, because I was awake during the rain, and then before I fell asleep last night I found 2 ticks. I found one burying into my scalp. It just happened to touch my scalp, and I was like, oh, something strange there, and the guy was burying in, and then I turned on the light and there was another one on my hat, so I had to investigate the entire tent, and then every time I felt a little itch I was like, where's that little tick? But I'll check myself now when I get up.
Don't look right, don't look right, don't look right, don't look right. Oh, fuck it, that looks right. Oh.
With the bike deteriorating quicker than I expected, I need to close the distance to Sydney. My slow puncture has become a not so slow puncture, but at least the storms have passed over and I am gifted blue skies and golden shores, which almost makes up for having to skip over this part of the country so quickly. But my priorities have shifted. I need to get myself and the bike back to Sydney safely and in one piece. But I'm not too worried. Compared to last week in the bush where I barely saw a soul, here people are everywhere. And the Aussies are blowing me away with their friendliness and their generosity. Well, the two-legged kind at least.
Just pulled a tick out of my neck. Jeez.
Everywhere I stop, I'm meeting people. The Aussies, well, the Aussies I've met anyway, are, as we'd say in Ireland, just a great bunch of lads. Sometimes they come over for a chat or a photograph or just to make sure I'm okay and ask if I need anything. And sometimes they come offering dinner and drinks. And sometimes they come as my guardian angel with a set of tire levers and a spare tube that just happens to be the right size. But after a night of wine and whiskey, all this physical exertion so early in the morning can agitate even the mildest of hangovers into a nauseous embarrassment. Here I am trying not to throw up. And again. And here I am politely excusing myself to throw up, leaving poor Chappie here to finish the job. Thanks, Chappie. I wouldn't have made it without you. So, on day 7 with a brand new tube and only 200 kilometers remaining until Sydney, I decide to stop and take a break in Kangaroo Valley. And that's it. Just like that, I'm setting up my tent for the last time. It seems almost insultingly abrupt. 7 days ago I left Melbourne, about 2.5 weeks ago I left Sydney, and now here I am, 200 kilometers away from the city. But I am in no rush for this to end. So having successfully got the bike within rescue distance from the city, I've decided to stay here for a couple of days by the Kangaroo River. My flight back to Ireland leaves in a week, and I don't know if or when I'll get back here again. When you spend so many of your days on a motorbike, you learn not to take anything for granted. And every time you arrive at the end of a day safely, you're grateful for it. Because every morning you get up to ride, you roll the dice. And to say I roll more than my fair share of dice is an understatement. But I know that, I choose to do it, and I always do everything I can to make sure the dice are in my favor. For my family, for my parents, and mostly so that I can keep doing this. Because for so long as I have life and limb, I want to use it. Because there's a difference between living and just existing. And I honestly feel that I owe it to those who aren't lucky enough to wake up in the morning and go swimming in a river, who don't have hours to spend just sitting looking at all of the weird and wonderful creatures that we share this planet with. I owe it. And more than anything, that is why I make these videos. And I hope that if someone does find themselves with a little bit of time and a little bit of money, that they just get a set of wheels or a pair of walking shoes and just get going. Nothing that's worth doing doesn't have some degree of risk in it. But like rolling the dice, there is a lot you can do to navigate that risk, and the reward is priceless. It's not about where you've been or what you've seen, it's about what you've felt and who you've met. Believe me when I say it, because I believe it. Despite all the shit, there are so many good people out there, but you've got to go and find them. You've got to go and be one of them. And that's what I try to do every day, because like I said, I owe it. So pull on your boots, take a deep breath, roll the dice, and I'll see you there. On a quiet beach where old ghosts meet, I dreamed you came to me, saying that you could not trust, as sailors must in what isn't, but could be. Yet it matters not, all this talk of what was broken or betrayed. For against my will, I love you still at the dawning of the day.
Okay, let's see if this works. It's about 150 kilometers to Sydney, but as far as I'm concerned, that's it. It's over. We did it. She did it. It's been a great few days here just relaxing by the river. Coming down after the last 3,000 kilometers. Over the past 3 weeks,
I've had plenty of time to reflect over the whole experience, and yeah, it's been quite intense. Australia is quite a country. I can't wait to come back. It's big, it's very big, and there's so much more to see. So I will come back, I absolutely will. The nature has been phenomenal. I've been blown away by it, and it's really just struck me how much of an ecological desert, a wilderness Ireland and much of Northern Europe is compared to this. It's just overwhelming at times. The Aussies have been great. They're a great bunch of lads. I've met so many lovely people. Sorry about this, I've lost my little lapel mic, so anyway. But yeah, no, the Aussies have been great. I really thought the Irish were really flying the flag in terms of friendliness and openness in the sort of Anglo world, but the Aussies are putting it up to us. It's no surprise, I mean, most of them are Irish anyway, so. But what I haven't liked, I suppose, are the flies. That has been a big struggle. They are incessant, and nobody ever warns you about the bloody flies. They get everywhere, and they don't stop. It's also quite expensive here, but everyone's complaining about that. And then there's the bike. In part 1 to this whole adventure, I said I had a point to prove, which is very unlike me, but I did have a point to prove, and that is that I could do what I wanted to do on a 125. I never had any doubt that I could do it. But when I went to rent a 125 off this first place in Sydney, they said they didn't actually have any in stock. I thought I had reserved one. I had just made a request to reserve one. And then I turned up expecting to get a bike, and they said, oh no, mate, you haven't actually reserved one. You've just put in a booking request. Anyway, we got talking, and the guy, you know, a young guy, probably a few years older than me, said, I don't have any 125s to give you, but I could give you a Honda Dio, I think he said. And I had no idea what it was, because it was a scooter. And I don't know anything about scooters. He said it was a 90cc, and I said, no, I don't want it. I don't want to ride an automatic. I don't want to drive an automatic, because for me that's not riding. And then he started to probe, and I started to get a little bit on edge. And he said, how far do you want to go? And I was like, you know, I'm just a bit out of the city. And he said, how far out of the city? And I was like, I was thinking of just spinning down to Melbourne. And his eyes nearly popped out of his head, and he said, mate, even if I had any 125s to give you, I wouldn't give you one, because that's impossible, he said. And then he started to mansplain me motorbikes, essentially. He was assuming that anyway, I won't get into that. My pride was not hurt, because, you know, if someone wants to assume something, go ahead. But he said to me, you know, this isn't Thailand. You can't just rent a small little bike and travel the country. He said most of the guys who tour Australia will be doing it on one of those. And he points to a GS Trophy on the showroom floor, and he says, this is an adventure bike. That's what these things do. They go fast. They go far. They're big bikes. 125s, you can't take them out of the city. And I was like, tell me more. Okay, fine. Goodbye. And I found this other place, the only other place that would rent a 125. And the reason why I wanted a 125 is because I could afford a 125. I couldn't afford a GS Trophy to rent for 3 weeks. So I found this place that was renting this CB for $100 a week. It was the only one they had left. As you can see, it's not really in great nick. I didn't say that to them. I was just happy to take it. They didn't ask any questions, so I didn't offer any objections. But the point is, what annoyed me about the first place that I went to, it wasn't the guy's attitude, although it wasn't very professional of him to assume that just because there's a young guy walking through the door that all he does is, you know, ride scooters around Thailand. I've never been to Thailand, never even ridden a scooter. That's not true. But I have a bit of experience riding bikes, to understate it a little bit. But what annoyed me was this attitude of, if you want to do something, you need this very specific thing, or you need to do these well outlined things, these points that you have to check. And if you don't meet these boxes, if you don't match our criteria, then you can't do the thing you want to do. And that's bullshit. Absolute bullshit. I never had any doubt. People go around the world on smaller bikes than this It's got an engine, it's got 2 wheels, it can go. It's a Honda, it's reliable, it's simple, and it's cheap. But it's this mentality of, it's this brand pushing marketing genius of convincing people that if they want to see a bit of the world, then they need to do it on this machine. And you need to have these things, these very specific and expensive bits and pieces to attach and hang off your bike, and you don't. You really don't. And I think I proved that, not to anyone, because most people know that, but I met a lot of people over the last 3 weeks who were very impressed by what I was doing on the bike. They couldn't believe that I'd ridden, down Eastern Australia, and I was like, well, yeah, I don't think it was the bike itself that impressed them. I've been called a legend on more times than I can count in the last 2 weeks, which made me feel real good. But it's not necessary, because it's not so much the tools that you do a thing on. It's more about the mindset. I think what impresses people is when they see someone who is doing what they want to do the way they want to do it. This isn't the way I want to do it, by the way. I am not a small bike person, as I've learned, but it's the way I can do it. It's the way I can afford to, and it was a means available to me for a 3-week adventure so I could see a bit of this country. And I did it. So, that's really it. That's my rant. If you want to see a bit of some of the world and you don't have the money to spend on a new 1300 GSA, do I recommend this? Nah. Ideally, no. But if it's all you can do, then yeah. Then do it. Then go for it. Of course, it comes with its own challenges, but that's a story for another day. This little 125, I can't wait to be rid of it. I really hope there's no shenanigans when I go to give it back and they see the mileage I've put on it. But I'm happy. I'm happy with the bike. I've kept it going. It's given me lots of headaches, but we pushed through and I've seen a bit of this beautiful country. I can't wait to come back. And with that, goodbye. Thanks for watching. I'll be back in Europe very soon. Happy New Year, Happy Christmas. And yeah, thanks for following along.